Gentlemen,
Can I please have your attention? Can you dig it?
Greetings, dear listeners. This is Jonah Goldberg, host of the Remnant podcast, brought to you by the Dispatch and Dispatch Media. I am still in New York. I am getting ready to get on the road. I'm going to have to write a G-file from my car at some rest stop. And I hope you enjoyed the counter programming that we did on Tuesday with Jazz Shaw, where we got really into the weeds on UFOs, which, given how otherworldly our politics have become, it was a nice break and kind of ironic. So, but now we got to get back into the grubby business of punditry that helps pay the bills, and so to make that as lovely and pleasant as possible, I got the lovely and pleasant and talented A.B. Stoddard to join us. A.B., welcome back to the Remnant.
Thank you for having me, Jonah. I'm here to grub with you.
And we should let listeners know I have to do this by an open window in New York because I cannot get my room to drop below what feels like Barton Fink, kind of like 90-degree heat. And I on a good day, I sweat like a fat man in an all-you-can-eat pasta bar. So it's a little weird in here. And then poor AB in the heart of the suburbs has lawnmower activity outside of her house that she's been running around the house trying to find a safe haven or safe harbor from, auditory safe harbor. And she was informed by her daughter home from college that she cannot, in fact, use her daughter's room. So we had to make do with the second best room. So you've been warned. If you hear birds, which apparently were loud on the UFO podcast, if that's in fact what they were, or if you hear lawnmower sounds, that's what you're hearing. Apologies, but this is the life we have chosen. AB, so how you feeling today? So Trump was indicted, gave his Mar-a-Lago speech, the airing of the grievances speech. What do you make of the things?
So I'm not a legal expert, and I don't step outside my safe space and get into that stuff, but I'm going to take them at their word that this was a bust as a case. Maybe David Pecker will surprise in trial. I mean, I'm not saying that something crazy can't happen down the road and a long, long time from now, and it can't end up being a stronger case than it appears. But obviously, politically, it seems like the perfect situation for Donald Trump and Republicans who are eager to defend him. Very rough day for the Republicans who are trying to get rid of Donald Trump. And I think last night was, classic Donald Trump, right? He had an opportunity to rub it in everyone's faces, but instead he kind of helped the special prosecutor because that's what he does. He was like, yeah, that's right. I took those docs and I have every right to, and did all that typical Trump stuff. So not really a surprise. What was interesting to me was how he was trying to get, before the indictment was unsealed, Republicans to show up at Mar-a-Lago to stand in solidarity. And I wondered what that was like for people getting those phone calls. And in the end, he only got Matt Rosendale, Matt Gaetz, and Marge Green. So it was still a clown show, Mike Lindell and whatever, Carrie Lake, but it was not Jim Jordan on stage, taking pics with the guy, or Elise Stefanik. So interesting moment of pressure for the party. They feel good about defending him. His defenders feel good about defending him now. But as much of a disappointment it might have looked like for those hoping that Alvin Bragg was going to pull together a strong case, and really, in the end, vindicate himself. Obviously, the cases to come that look like they will result likely in indictments will make us, I think, not just forget yesterday. I mean, if they are the cases they appear to be, it'll be hard to really remember this as a big day if if the long arms of the law come for Trump in those election stealing cases or the document case.
Yeah, I mean, so there's a lot of things we should probably tease out. Take big box of things. We should probably rummage through it and take out some of the shiny things. And but first, I keep trying to figure out a way to make this point that comes across well, and the words they know come easy. But I find it fascinating, just fascinating as a sociological thing, as a guy who sort of cut his chops saying Bill Clinton's behavior was not good, right? There is almost no dispute on Fox, OAN, Twitter, Trump's talk, anywhere, that he is not, in fact, guilty of the underlying behaviors that he is being indicted for. The only debate is whether or not these rise to the level of an indictable felony kind of thing, right? So it's a technical question of law that everyone is making into the issue. But like, you don't like, I just keep waiting for somebody to say, how dare you, sir, suggest that the president of the United States, that Donald Trump, would cheat on his wife with an adult film actress or a Playboy playmate, right? I mean, like, there's no suggestion anywhere that he didn't, like, I keep getting chastised when I use the word affair. Okay, so trysts, encounters, transactional relationships, whatever you want to call it, with these women. No one is saying that didn't happen. And I think that's in part because of the sort of bro culture of a certain wing of MAGA. Actually, that's what they like about him, right? And they don't want to say he didn't do it because they think it's awesome that he did it. And no one really disputes that he worked with Pecker to do the catch and kill stuff, or that he paid the hush money stuff, right? I mean, like, even Donald Trump Jr., or what's the other one, Uday or Kusei, one of them was on Hannity last night, and yeah, Eric, and he's like, all of this fuss for a $130,000 NDA agreement. Well, okay, he's just admitted, like, yeah, my dad, stripped a porn star and paid her off, and and so, like, I think that fact, which in Washington, whenever these pundit fights start about courtroom stuff, we immediately all put on our legal hats. But I don't know that plays that this is to Trump's advantage in Iowa or to the GOP's advantage anywhere. And but it's funny how everybody wants to make it. Everyone wants to play a lawyer on TV, and like, I find the law stuff interesting, but like much less important than some of the other things.
Well, I agree with what you've been saying for a while now, which is like, of course we know that he's guilty of these things. I mean, there's no question. And of course, MAGA is completely, if not comfortable with that, celebratory about that. That he, not only that he should be able to, have this sort of squalid personal life, but that he is allowed to do catch and kill, make deals to interfere with elections. I mean, this did come around the time, if you look back to Access Hollywood and how, shaky those days were for him, with Reince Priebus going to Trump Tower to say, you've got to crawl off the ticket. I mean, it was consequential in terms of the campaign, but we always come back to the fact that Trump is held to a different standard, because if we hold him to account, a lot of people will get their feelings hurt, and they'll get violent and get mad and throw things, and possibly burn things, and we could have a mini January 6th event. And so this is a completely different set of standards for him. And I think you're right that what's interesting is sort of out there in the land of not politically addicted swing voters who decide elections on things that blow our minds. They might look at this, especially if there's more indictments, and say, this is really a lot. This is really too much. These are crimes. He got busted, and it might not be received the way that we're all analyzing it. And they don't look into things like felonizing misdemeanors, right? They just can look at it and be like, wow, man, I couldn't get away with that either. And he's gotten away with all this stuff. And if it comes to indictment number 3, I think that there's likely to be a cumulative effect. But again, this is right. This is the a different subject entirely. What it's going to do to him as a nominee versus what it's going to do to him now with his ability to mow over Ron DeSantis. I mean, those are different questions.
Just curious what your actual position. So there's this talking point going around. Karen Finney was making it last night on CNN with me. I can talk it round. I can talk it square. I mean, this claim that on the heels of the Stormy Daniels thing, if this story had broke out as well, that it could have cost Trump the election. And on the one hand, maybe, I mean, obviously you can't, it's not falsifiable, but, and any election that comes down to 78,000 votes in 5 states you can blame every factor, weather, bad hair day, whatever. But what do you think? I mean, like, if you had to guess, do you think it would have mattered that much?
So the double haters in 2016 who couldn't tolerate either candidate broke late for Trump, but by like a big margin. I think it was like 18 points or something. And so a lot of people attribute that to James Comey. So yes, it's hard. In a way, we'll never know. But if you think about Republicans who just might have stayed home, who were just thinking, there's so much smoke. Now there's a raging fire. This is just a disaster. He's going to, he can't win. He's a crippled president. I'm going to be busy that day. I'm going to watch Netflix. Like, right. Just like you said, there's so many things that could have stopped them from getting in the car. And so we can't know. And it's entirely feasible that it's totally rational that some Paul Ryan Republicans would have said, I'm done. I'm just done.
Right. Also, it could be like it's the sense of, I mean, we see this all the time in politics where there's a revelation and then there's a second revelation. And then all of a sudden, all these politicians are like, well, if one shoe dropped and another shoe dropped, what's coming next? Right. So there could be this like, catalyzing panic about, oh my gosh, it's a trend. Right. The George Santos revelations or whatever. Like you don't know where the bottom is on these things. So I mean, I can see it. I'm not sure it's a winning argument to persuade anybody now, because so many people have retroactively. It's like there were a lot of people who didn't like Trump in 2016 who now have become, as Morgan Freeman might say in Shawshank, institutionalized to the Trumpian GOP, and it's difficult to retroactively figure this stuff out with them. So then there's this other question. I think Nate Cohn from the New York Times made this point recently. The polling, it seems to me, is all over the place. It's going to stay fuzzy for a little bit, but it seems like a majority of Americans are generally favorable about this, even though a bigger majority concede what I think is obvious, that politics is playing a part in here. And it seems to me like it's partly, I've gotten into this fight with my advisory opinion colleagues here. It's partly the karma factor, right? Like there are a lot of people who figure Trump's gotten away with so much that he didn't deserve to get away with. And now he's getting caught on something that, is kind of rinky dink, but he was pressing his luck for so long that, here you go. And I think Cohen called it a lifetime achievement award kind of feeling from a lot of people. If a majority of Americans still feel that way in 3 weeks or 3 months, does the GOP start figuring out, okay, this can't be our guy?
Jonah, the GOP is a lost cause.
I figured I had to ask.
So a wise man once said this morning on CNN that he's juggled chainsaws his whole life. And that's true. I mean, he's been under investigation for 50 years. And, sooner or later, there's going to be a misstep, right? Something's going to happen. But the Republican base is rallying around him because of what's always attracted them to him, because he tells them, if I have to obey the law, then you do too, and you'll be next. But more importantly, it's really what it's doing to the other candidates. The inability to run against Trump when you're embracing him, when you're defending him. No one's figured out how to run against Trump. To take him down, you have to take him on. No one is taking him on, except for Asa Hutchinson, who's not going to go anywhere. And so, no, I know that they feel already the adult Republicans, the sober-minded conservatives of yore, the people that know we've got to get rid of this guy, that know what 2018 was about, 2020 was about, 2022 was about. And by the way, I mean, Trump almost won 2020, but he was, we can think back just a few months ago to when he was a pariah. Like after the midterms, everyone said out loud, it was Trump's fault. And so
Right.
we know that they are somewhere knowing that the cumulative effect of future indictments and all of this baggage and grievance is toxic. But I just look, Jonah, and I see just paralysis, just total fear, total numbness, and the inability to build a coalition to take him on. It would have to be led by Ron DeSantis. I mean, he'd have to be the front-facing, fearless leader charging into the abyss, and he looks like he refuses to do it. So, the primary voters, unless the Republicans figured out how to reconstitute the primary electorate, to energize people to come in and try to take it back from MAGA. But I don't know that we know that effort is underway, and I don't think they could keep it a secret. So when I look at them, I think, boy, you guys are just going to continue to wish cast, and that won't make this go away.
Yeah, I mean, just to explain the juggling chainsaws thing, I've been trying to figure out a way to make the point that there are people who like press their luck all their lives, and then when they unfairly or not unfairly run out of luck, they complain a lot, right? And so, like, my basic rule is, like, I could see my dad saying, look, if you juggle chainsaws, you're going to lose a finger. Now, it may be that you eventually lose a finger because some guy trips you or bumps into you or startles you, and that's bad, and they shouldn't do that. But, like, if you didn't juggle chainsaws in the first place, it'd be much less likely that you would, lose a finger. And it's sort of like Grizzly. You ever see the Grizzly Man documentary?
No.
It's spoiler.
That sounds very Jonah.
Yeah, spoiler alert, the guy gets eaten by a bear. And like the entire documentary is him pressing his luck with the grizzly bears when the grizzly bears are really well fed. And then when the salmon go away, one of the grizzly bears is like, well, I'd rather salmon, but I will eat this mentally ill dude who's been saying crazy things in front of me with the camera for a while, and now he eats them, right? And like all my Alaskan friends, like, well, of course he got eaten by a grizzly bear. Like, you spend a lot of time with grizzly bears acting as if they're pets, and they're going to eat you eventually. Like, it's their timetable, not your timetable. And that's my point about, like, what I think how a lot of people look at this is they're not going to get into the weeds about whether you can bootstrap a state misdemeanor with a federal law to make a crime, felony, yada, yada, yada. Maybe Bragg has got a way to get around that by making it, he's alluding to state tax and campaign law, and maybe he can get around that or not. But I think most Americans would be like, well, of course Trump did the things, and and maybe they shouldn't have brought this case, but it's not like he wasn't looking for trouble and found it. And the thing that, like, so Trump said in this fundraising email where he photoshopped a mugshot of himself, this is the darkest time in American history. And I was on CNN last night. I was like, I could swear there was this thing about slavery. And like, this is the anniversary of Martin Luther King getting shot. And there was like the Vietnam War, I mean, like, this personalization of his own problems into national problems just doesn't seem like a way to add voters to the GOP column.
He doesn't intend to add voters to the GOP column. That's not what he does. He believes solely in just mobilizing people who support him to give more, to show up more at the rallies, and then to be there at the polls, when it matters. But I don't think that he believes that he was going to persuade any new person. He stopped talking about people's problems. He focuses solely on his own, and so that's what he's selling. And until and unless Ron DeSantis gets up there, or Tim Scott, and says, I hear you, Donald Trump, talking about yourself all the time, but I don't hear you talking about how to revitalize distressed communities. And I don't hear you talking about, how much my eggs cost. And so until and unless he's only, he's a sociopathic narcissist, megalomaniac, circus sideshow. And so it's going to be about Trump, because he's going to be fending off prosecution and fearing new indictments 24/7 right now. And so I don't know that he can focus on anything else. And so as long as that keeps raising dollars and more people show up at rallies and stuff, the more intimidated Ron DeSantis becomes. It's like a vicious cycle. I don't know. We have to count on the others to say, all you ever do is talk about yourself. You're not running as a candidate to make America better. You're just running against Alvin Bragg and Fonnie Willis and Jack Smith, and it's not going to solve any problems. It's not going to lift the country up. It's not going to win a general election until we, see somebody find the nuts to say that. He's going to be able to appear that he's mobilizing a great movement again, because to him, as long as he can, have big rallies, raise big amounts of small dollars, and then eventually, as we know, win a plurality in New Hampshire and Iowa, he can very well plow his way to the nomination. And of course, I would bet on that today.
Okay, let's hold that thought for a second and talk about our sponsor today, that I'm very happy to be associated with, and that's the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression. Do you value free speech, individual rights, and academic freedom? Then I have something important to tell you. The Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, aka FIRE, is a staunchly nonpartisan nonprofit organization that fights for your right to express your opinions without fear of censorship or retaliation. FIRE basically does what the ACLU no longer does. Even when I disagreed in the past with some of the ACLU's positions, I was always glad to have a zealous advocate for free speech in the mix, in the argument. The ACLU has just simply become part of the sort of undifferentiated progressive blob now. And so the FIRE is stepping up and taking on that role. It defends people from across the ideological spectrum for their free speech rights, for their freedom of expression rights, for their freedom of conscience rights, particularly in academic settings, and they deserve our support. FIRE also publishes a weekly newsletter called FIRE Update. Each update covers the latest developments in free speech and individual rights. It exposes censorship on campus and in communities, highlights free speech victories, and offers readers opportunities to participate in the conversation. By subscribing, you'll join a diverse community of individuals who are like-minded in their commitment to free expression. So what are you waiting for? Head to thefire.org/update or click the link in the episode description and subscribe to the FIRE Update today. Your voice matters, and with FIRE on your side, you can help protect the rights that keeps our society free.
So we talked about this back in 2022 or in advance of the 2022 elections about how cynical it was for Democrats to support the craziest Republicans, the most MAGA, the most election denying guys. It feels less obvious, but also very similar to me that it seems like the Democrats are growing more and more comfortable with the idea of running against Trump. There was this piece in Politico recently that sort of intimated that the Biden's advisors are thinking that this is the best way to go. Do you think that that's in fact the thinking? And what do you think of Biden's chances? it's putting a lot on an 80-something-year-old dude to keep Donald Trump from getting reelected again. Because I would like some suspenders to go with the belt if that's who we're counting on.
So I literally 4 days ago was at lunch with a like-minded fellow and said, I think that it is scientifically proven, okay, maybe not proven, but realistic, that Trump was responsible for hundreds of thousands of people dying of COVID while he lied to us. He was on the phone with Merck January 30th of 2020, trying to find a vaccine, knowing how lethal this was. A week later, on February 7th, he told Bob Woodward he knew how dangerous it was. And he lied and he lied and he lied. He wouldn't give us tests. He didn't want the numbers. We couldn't test ourselves. The thing is absolutely crazy. And he almost beat Biden. He lost by 44,000 votes in 4 states this time. I mean, that's what decided the election this time. And so I see a Trump-Biden rematch, and I see those voters I referred to earlier who are not partisan, who don't follow this stuff, looking at these 2 old men and saying, Biden looks older and gas costs more now. And so I'm just going to vote for Trump because he seems like he has more energy and he won't end up in the hospital. And the gas was cheaper then. Done. So any experiment where they think, oh, we'll do this again, we can beat him back. Biden beat him in 2020. Is to me is a huge mistake. I understand their fear of Biden running against Ron DeSantis. I still believe that Biden's not running. I believe that he keeps pushing off his announcement because he doesn't know how to get out of this, but he can't. I just don't think he can run. I still feel that way. And I think that the Democrats are really miscalculating, thinking that Donald Trump is going to be easy to beat. I do, however, Jonah, think that if we go to a younger Democrat like Gretchen Whitmer or Josh Shapiro up against old crazy man Trump, I think they have a better chance than Biden. My personal opinion.
No, I tend to believe that too. You have to figure out what to do about, what do you do with a problem like Kamala, right? My hotel is right around where West Side Story is supposed to take place, and so I feel like I should sing that, but I will spare everybody. But yeah, no, I agree. Like Josh Shapiro, I think, particularly, and I don't want to speak with too broad a brush, but like there is a fringe of MAGA world that loves to play with the anti-Semitism stuff, and that will turn off more voters than it will attract. And also Trump is terrible with female opponents. He says things that really, for kind of understandable reasons, annoy women. And
just a little.
Yeah. So, I agree with that entirely. If you could figure out how to clear the field of the worst candidates, I think it's almost a given that Trump would lose against somebody else. I mean, this is very much like the problem in 2016, right? Is both parties nominated the one candidate capable of losing to the other one. So then this brings us to the no labels option, the third party option. I know you were friends with some of these people. First of all, just for listeners who are not clued in, what the hell's going on there?
Well, there's a long Washington Post piece that I would recommend because it has every single detail about their polling and everything that they've done from start to finish on this. And it came out over the weekend. So that was like April 2. It came out Sunday. I believe in the concept of third-party options. I always have. But obviously it's unproven because they've only been spoilers, and we can't see a scenario in which they are not spoilers. And so the no labels insurance policy concept was supposed to be for unacceptable options for both parties. And that was initially discussed as Bernie versus Trump or AOC versus Trump. I don't know how you call Joe Biden unacceptable. I don't believe that Joe Biden is going to run because of his age, and I think he doesn't want to run again. But I don't think he's unacceptable. And I think in the face, I mean, if there is a Biden and Trump rematch, that the Americans dread this, I do not think that Biden is unacceptable against a man who tried to wreck the constitutional order and still intends to. So there's that's what Bill Galston said, and Bill Galston has left no labels. So there's a lot of controversy around this because they are polling a concept, but they don't have a ticket. And so while people can say it looks like Joe Manchin is probably going to be on their ticket, they wouldn't name a ticket until next year. And they say that they wouldn't run this third party unity ticket if they didn't need to. Joe Lieberman was quoted saying, maybe we'll bring our platform to both candidates and one of them will endorse our moderate, independent, pragmatic platform, and then they will get our endorsement. The problem is, I mean, anyway, we just don't know in that scenario, right? If Biden or Trump would sign on to that, and we don't know if Biden and Trump are going to be the nominees, and it's such a volatile situation. And either Biden or Trump could actually end up in the hospital just actuarially in the next, 9 months, that it's just hard to know what that looks like now. And so, right now, I don't think it's a live prospect simply because it's a long way between now and them naming a ticket. And they're polling, some of their new polling looks like it showed that it would indeed help Trump. And so initially it showed that it didn't. And so that, I don't think it's an actual, to me, it doesn't look like it's going to happen. But this is my independent, politically homeless centrist thing that I've always just wished we could elect more independents and deny a majority, let's say in the Senate, to Chuck Schumer or Mitch McConnell. But, it doesn't seem to work out. It could work out at the state level. But in terms of a presidential election, it still seems like, really smart people like Mike Bloomberg have tried this. And in the end, it looks like independents, too many of them are leaners. And in a fight, they bounce back to their partisan corners.
Yeah, I have I've worn it for many a podcast, a Samoans for Bloomberg t-shirt.
Oh, God, Jonah, that is the best.
I can't remember who sent it to me, and I really apologize because I feel like I should remember, but it's this great shirt, and it's just like, because Samoa was the one place he won delegates from, and for the princely sum of like $12 million per Samoan or something like that.
Oh, that's beautiful.
All right, so I should be clear. A.B. Stoddard is beloved and revered across the land. I have many friends who just think you're the best, but they also think you're crazy about Biden's not running. And I'll tell you when we're not recording who has texted me about this after the last time you were on. So I feel like I should give you the opportunity to make your case one more. I mean, I think everybody who listens to this podcast knows the why you think he shouldn't run, too old, yada, yada, yada. But on what do you base this idea that he will not run?
Okay. I don't believe he's running because I don't believe that he can because of his age. I believe that doesn't mean that he's not worth voting for. Like I just said, he is not unacceptable. If he were to run against Trump, he would absolutely be worth voting for. I would never vote for Donald. I've never had vote for Donald Trump. And after January 6th, I just don't know how anyone could rationalize it. But I do think that I have written multiple columns on why I don't think that Biden will run, and I don't think he can. And this is the short, bullet points. I understand that he chose Kamala Harris because she was the do no harm candidate, but it has not been a great success. Americans do not want President Biden to be succeeded by her in the event of a health crisis. And they do not believe that she can win a national election, nor does Biden's team believe now that she can win the presidency. And so he's in a little bit of a jam. He doesn't want to offend Black women, most important part of the Democratic coalition. All of this I understand. However, Joe Biden, should he decide not to run, and I'll get to why I don't think he will in a minute, Joe Biden does not have to endorse his vice president. In fact, you don't do that. Barack Obama dumped him for Hillary Clinton. It wasn't in the headlines of the newspaper, but everybody, it was implicit. He had chosen Hillary Clinton.
Mm-hmm.
And Joe Biden, should he say at any point, I have decided that my family and I have come together and decided, I really can't, I shouldn't pursue this, and tell you that I can solve this country's problems and lead the free world until January of 2029. And so at that point, he would say, choosing Kamala Harris was the best decision I ever made, and may the best man or woman win. She's going to be so hard to beat. But Joe Biden doesn't pick nominees. Voters pick nominees. You don't put your thumb on the primary. You don't do it. And he can't do it. And so he can act like he's super supportive, and he might have lined up South Carolina that way, but you don't choose a horse. And so that way he's able to say, to bless an open primary and say, I will fight like hell to make sure that whoever is the nominee wins the general election. That's how he leaves. That's how you handle that. And you keep saying nice things about her, and you let her do a lot of events with him, whatever. But no, you do not rig it for her. The thing was rigged for Hillary Clinton, and look where that got the Democrats. Okay, you don't rig it. And we know that parties aren't able to rig things anyway. That's crazy, right? They don't control the good money. This is anyway. I mean, the important money. So then, as we've discussed, there are plenty of people that can step in. And the reason I don't think he's going to run is because he intended to only serve one term, but his advisors talked him out of it in 2019, doing a one-term pledge. Therefore, he came out and said that thing about how he's a bridge to the next generation. And I just think that I've covered Joe Biden and spent a lot of time with him. And I believe that of all the things you can say about him, you can bust on him as a gaffe machine and a fabulous, but he's not self-aware. He's aged in the presidency, as everybody does, no matter their age, when they serve as president. It's an enormously stressful job. And I believe that he knows that he shouldn't serve till 86, and he really can't. And that he could, as a senator, be 89 years old, like Chuck Grassley, but that he shouldn't be trying, that he sets the country, maybe even the West, up for a crisis if he's president at that age. And so I do not see it. I do not see how he proceeds and says, I am a viable candidate for president. I don't see how he campaigns. I don't see how he wins. The whole thing is, I don't see any of it. So I know that I'm alone and I'm isolated. I totally understand that, but this is my gut instinct that this is crazy that he could run.
So, look, being alone and isolated is what the Remnant is all about. And I agree with large swaths, or as the British would say, swathes, because they're barbarians, of your argument. But the only place I got to push back a little bit is just the self-aware part. And I don't look at Joe Biden, forget corn pop and all that kind of stuff. I don't see Joe Biden when he talks about Joe Biden, and I say, wow, look at that self-aware guy,
No, Jonah, I'm not saying that. I'm saying, that's why I phrased it the way I did. I said he's not self-aware. Joe Biden entered the Senate with one of his sons were in the hospital from the car accident that killed his wife and daughter. And then later on had either some kind of embolism or aneurysm and was out of the Senate for 6 months as a young man. This dude is not aware of how much he's aged. He is aware of how tired he is. That's what I'm talking about. He's aware of how fragile his son's life is, Hunter, that he is an addict who could go off the wagon at any time and start using again. He is aware that his grandchildren really look to him as Bo's kids. I mean, he's not just a matriarch. I mean, in a way, he and Jill are really mom and pop of the whole family.
Patriarch, by the way.
sorry, patriarch. I'm sorry, not enough coffee this morning.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Like, I think he's aware of his family's needs and his own age. And apparently, when he's in private, he says, "You don't think I know how old I am?" Like, he knows this. Like, it's like an open discussion, and so that's what I'm saying.
So, if I had a theory that, say, Luxembourg was preparing for an invasion of Germany, I would look for evidence to support my theory. Like, are they massing their 3 tanks on the border? Are they drafting their 12 non-Euro trash, non-club kid, able-bodied men into their army, right? Whatever it is, are you seeing things institutionally in the Democratic Party or in the White House that is a sign that Biden knows that he's not going to run and is trying to set things up for a non-rigged primary, or anything that you would say, aha, this is proof or evidence, not proof, evidence that supports my contention that in his heart of hearts, he knows he's not going to run again?
Yes, crazy conspiracy theorists look for signs, and I am doing that. I'm on the hunt. And I give you Jeff Zients. If you're running for a second term as an 82-year-old man, would he be your chief of staff? No, that's a lame duck chief of staff. Keep the trains running, everything's great. But like, Ron Klain's going to go to the campaign. Where's the campaign? I continue. He told David Muir a few weeks ago when he was interviewed, he goes, "Oh, no." He goes, "When are you going to announce?" He goes, "I don't know. I have so much to do before a campaign. I have so much left to do." And it just sounded to me like, I'm not dealing with this. Would you have, on crime, on drilling, and on immigration, pissed off the progressive left this spring if you're running to like secure every last vote of theirs and like drive them into an energized campaign? Probably not. And I know.
Well, I don't know, but I especially because like my people, my troglodytic right wing, non-Trumpy people, they see, and even some of my troglodytic Trumpy people, they see Biden doing the
racing to the center,
walking like an old man at the mall getting his steps in towards the center.
In his Chanel tracksuit.
Yeah, with tennis balls on the walker, but he's getting there. He's going in that direction.
So I don't see that. And then my final thing is that Jill said in an interview with CNN in Africa, "Oh, of course he's going to do it. And then at the end, she slipped and said, I mean, look, if he wants to do it, of course we'll support him." So again, this just defies our physical powers. It defies logic and rationale. This is just, everyone is talking about this, Jonah, like he's going to announce tomorrow that he's running and the election's going to be on June 5th. Like, this is like, look down the road at this. It's not rational to me. And I know I'm the only one. And everyone says he's the only one who can keep the coalition together. Whatever, man. I just think it's such a risk for him to run at his age, a risk to run against Trump, a risk to run against Ron DeSantis. I think he knows that. A risk to leave Kamala Harris to inherit the presidency. I think he wants to concentrate on Ukraine and China and not a campaign running around saying stupid things, falling off stages like Bob Dole at Chico, ending up in, a half body cast with a broken femur. It's just not, to me, it's totally unrealistic.
I'm not with you.
You feel me?
Like, I'm sure your husband has some experience with this. When you're shopping with your wife and you have to hold her handbag, and sit bored at the department store for a while, right? That's how I feel, right? I'm not going into the dressing room with you. You're in there alone, but I'm going to hold your handbag and like be supportive and That's the best I can do. And I want you to be true. I want you to come out with the best outfit ever, whatever. That's great. And I'm happy to pay for it. And I'll be delighted if it all works out. But this is the dumbest friggin' metaphor I could come up with, but it's just how I feel about it.
I love it. You're just cringing on the inside holding a purse.
Yeah. But I'm there for you. I'm not going to abandon you. I'm not going to go play, asteroids at the retro arcade or get a smoothie. I'm here. And I'm supporting you in this, and in part because I want it to be true.
Look, I very smart people, I will tell you, and I cannot release their names, but very smart people agree with me. Very smart, published, syndicated people. So
on the is or the ought. I mean, that you're right on the prediction, or that you're right that your prediction should be true.
The American people are with me in the polling on the ought. Everyone is. We're all in the same ought boat.
Yeah.
No, on the gut instinct that we are in for a huge surprise, and that this man knows he can't do it. No offense to Jeff Science, but realistically, this is crazy on so many levels.
No, I agree. I agree. I mean, and they blinded me with Zions. So where to go from here? So we're doing rank punditry. What do you make of the results in Wisconsin?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that it was a landslide is crazy. It's so bad for Republicans. I don't know exactly what the trigger law is that kicked in last summer, but it's bad. The abortion, the no abortion except unless the mom is dying, I think. And that is a real problem for Republicans. Just if you look at the 2024 field, we know that Trump has thrown the pro-life movement under the bus. He blamed, rightfully so, a lot of the midterm results on abortion, but that is apparently causing him. I mean, there's some erosion from his evangelical support. I don't know if that's going to matter in the end, because it's really, in the end, it's no longer it's just binary, right? They're going to go with the winner for power. But I think Ron DeSantis and anyone else who's Nikki Haley and people who are going to be in the race have to figure out how to talk to Mike Pence about this issue and find themselves in the space where the consensus spot for most Americans. We believe that abortion should be legal until 12 or 15 weeks. 20 is the outermost. But I think it's really hard, this no exception space for Republicans. These trigger laws are making pro-life voters pro-Roe after they learned what would become of this. And so I just think that this Wisconsin, that's what it's all about to me in Wisconsin. It's not so much the redistricting maps, that was the other issue that Protasiewicz was running on. And I think that the abortion thing is alive and well and a huge problem for Republicans.
I think Sarah Longwell was making this point. I was making this point I saw that she was making it after I was on CNN this morning. But, the demands of what the base of the Republican Party want to hear, whether it's Trumpy grievances or it's the straight pro-life position, which on the merits, I am sympathetic to the straight pro-life position, but I'm just saying as a political matter, I can't get work. Well, anyway, we don't need to talk about abortion policy. I'm less of a stalwart pro-lifer than my pro-life friends would like, and I'm way too much of a pro-lifer for my pro-choice friends. So there you go. But it's very remnant-y. What the sincere base of the party wants is straight pro-life stuff. And then there's also the sort of the MAGA base, which there's some overlap, which just wants to hear the airing of the grievances over and over and over again. And basically hear the Mar-a-Lago speech from last night. And the problem is that neither of those positions wins the marginal moderate Republican swing, persuadable, centrist, independent, whatever, right? I mean, it's been the same for 7 years now that the GOP is caught up in this theory of electoral politics that it's like the salesman who says, sure, we lose money on every sale, but we'll make it up in volume, right? I mean, they do all sorts of things that are great for solidifying voters they already got, but turn off the marginal gettable voter. And it seems to me that the abortion position and the all in for the personalization of the Republican Party to Trump are two ways in which it's guaranteed to be a rump party, right? I mean, it's at the national level, it cannot be a majority party if it has no sort of like attempt to win over people to a coalition that would make it a majority party.
Yeah, it's just so amazing, Jonah, to watch the Party of Freedom become the party that is just bumper sticker taking away your freedoms. I mean, that is the perception now. Republicans are going to take your books. They're going to try to stop you from going from a red state to a blue state to get an abortion, and on and on. And it's just insane. I understand. Again, I think everyone should be morally conflicted over abortion. I'm deeply conflicted over it, but I believe it should be, like I said, I legal until early. And the idea of no exceptions is so radical to most Americans, right? So I mean that's if you look at polling and after the election, abortion has become more popular, legal abortion, more supported after Dobbs, and only 8% of the country believes in abortion without exception. So I really believe there would be space for Republicans to come in and say, by the way, you make the good point, which is like a lot of MAGA is actually pro-choice. Like they're not in it for the pro-life thing, like, right? And so, and they weren't Republicans or Democrats before they came into MAGA, right? They weren't politically active. They weren't politically committed. So this is this inherent conflict. But what would it take for Republicans to just step out and say, we see what has happened. We believe that the end of Roe was a victory because it was wrongly decided, and this is more democratic. It should be decided by each state. But me personally, candidate, for brains, I believe that abortion. That I believe in exceptions, and I believe in this sort of somehow measured position. But running and hiding, I mean, what was so interesting was watching the pro-life leaders after the election say, we didn't hear from Republicans. They ran and hid. We want them to make clear their position, and until they do, they can't even begin to try to win back voters on this issue, right? And that's the truth. I mean, only Ron DeSantis, I guess, is running from 15 weeks to 6, but I don't hear him rhetorically defending it, but he will have to later. This is just a place where that becomes untenable for swing voters. And then, of course, yes, what lost the elections for Republicans in the midterms? Trump candidates and abortion. And so the election denialism, even Laura Ingraham is constantly tweeting to leave that behind. Don't talk about rigged elections. Don't talk about stolen elections. Like, are the candidates, Jonah, going to actually stand up and say to Trump, I doubt they'll talk about abortion and address this liability, but the 2024 field, are they going to actually say to Trump, like, you lost to Joe Biden, you actually lost the election and it wasn't stolen? I mean, this, right? We don't know that. And so, as they think about, Trump's not going to think about any of this. So if he's the nominee, that's where the party's going. But it's really incumbent on these other candidates to try to reshape this primary by addressing those liabilities. And I just don't see them doing it.
So I want to get to that in 1 second, but just a factual question, because I've been touting for a long time how you could tell where the smart position was for Republicans by where DeSantis and Youngkin went immediately after Dobbs. They were like, mid first trimester, it's okay, and then it gets harder and harder, which I think is really the sweet spot for most Americans too. And then they just went silent on it, which I thought was the smart political thing, right? But so now I saw that that Florida's moving towards a 6-week rather than a 15-week thing. Is that driven by DeSantis, or is that DeSantis giving in to the state legislature? Because I have this, let me put it in this context. I have this theory about DeSantis that he is more of a Ferris Bueller than people realize, by which I mean he sees a parade and he runs out in front of it and pretends that he's leading it. He didn't want to do the thing that he did with Disney. Twitter wanted more flesh than he planned on giving, so he had to go for more because he has to stay sort of in front of the very online right, and I think he often, because he wants to look like he's leading the online right rather than following it, but I think he's often following it, and I'm wondering, is he following the legislature here? Like, is this something that he asked the legislature to do, or is this something that the legislature said, hey, we're going to do this anyway, and you should get out in front of it?
I don't know that. But in the end, really, what does it matter? I mean, if Ron DeSantis is going to saddle himself with this and not try to work for 15 weeks, he's going to end up with it, and that's going to be his policy, and it's going to be one of the things that define his candidacy when this comes up as an issue. Should it come up as an issue, and he, let's say, is trying to differentiate himself from Mike Pence on stage, and so I don't know if he's just a bandwagoner, but like that's his record now, right? That's all these things are going to define DeSantis. That he wants to desperately get to the right of Trump on vaccines, like, all that stuff is going to be, that's what it's going to be, what he's selling. He's going to be selling a 6-week ban because he didn't fight it.
So on this, that's really getting to the right of vaccines thing. I get it. I have lots of friends who are still very angry about the COVID period, and there are things to be angry about. I'm not trying to belittle it. I think that the system overall did not behave very well, and we can bring in the giant truck full of steaming piles of blame, and we can apportion it in maybe different ways to different people and different institutions. But have you seen polling that suggests, like, here's my point. I think the sort of the Twitter conversation, the very online conversation, the sort of Claremont Institute, young Republican kind of hothead universe thinks that the vaccine stuff is a really salient political issue. And my question is it actually that, or is this purely like the hothouse of Republican primary politics? Like, it just feels like one of these, issues that is of raging concern to a small group of people. And that's fine. There are all sorts of issues like that. But the small group of people think it's actually a raging concern to large numbers of people because they're in an echo chamber. Do you have a sense one way or the other?
Right. Well, I think the very online right and the very online left live in bubbles, and it's myopic, and they can't understand that the rest of us disagree or don't care because they don't inform themselves about that. That's fine. I think that Ron DeSantis has a lot of appeal to the general electorate if he talks about learning loss and keeping businesses alive in COVID. So the fewer restrictions part of his governing, I think, is very appealing. Florida's a different place. People could be outside more easily. There was a lot of death and sickness and hospitalization, but he can really do he can have like a little brochure about that really works. I think the vaccine thing it's not because a considerable chunk of Americans are sitting around to this day saying the J&J vaccine gave my son, my teenage son, heart inflammation or whatever. It's that he was just trying to find another place where he could run to the right of Trump. And that he knew that there was a lot of anti-vax sentiment within MAGA and that he could fire that up. And he can, because they booed Trump on stage about the vaccines. Like we know that he knows it'll work with MAGA. But I think that was just like he wanted to have another trick in his primary, bag. But no, I don't think that's. It's not compelling beyond the primary, and I think it obviously wounds him for the general election. I think it's stupid, but I do think that Ron DeSantis has a real story to tell about the pressure that he resisted, and he can sort of fluff it and spin it in ways that really would work in a general election.
Okay, so I want to wheel back to the Trump indictment stuff to close this out. I wrote my LA Times column about this. And I am fully aware that for some people, my theory is absolutely wrong. But it seems to me that if you know other indictments are coming down the pike, coming to Trump's side or supporting Trump on the Bragg indictment, particularly when it's the Romney position, right? So like the Romney position of I don't think Trump is fit. I mean, forget the Romney, every other Republican position, which is this is a political stretch, it's bad, blah 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 blah, right? That actually could be a smart play for people like DeSantis and Pence and all these people, because it allows them, when the next indictment comes, the ability to say, hey, look, I'm not a reflexive get Trump guy. I got his back on this thing, but this thing is different. It's more serious. It's more buttoned down. And we have to take it seriously, and we have to let, the rule of law, blah, 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 blah. And so in a weird way, there's all this talk, which I've contributed to, about how Bragg going first was bad. But there's actually an argument to say getting the weakest one out there first is kind of good, because then it lets everybody get on record as saying, look, I'm not a puppet of the mainstream media and blah, 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 blah. But when the next one comes down, you can say, whoa, this is not some cheap list of misdemeanors. This is like a serious thing here. And we have to take it seriously. And am I crazy about that? Or do you think it's actually going to happen? I think I'm right theoretically, logically, like rhetorically, but do you think when the next indictment comes, assuming it does, you'll see the change of tune among a lot of Republicans?
I think that I completely understand your theory, and I thought January 6th would inoculate them. But here's where we are, and you might be at Men's Warehouse, and I'm holding your purse outside the dressing room. Jonah, I hope so. I think it's entirely feasible, right? Just like you say, you get your street cred on the Bragg thing. You say this is an outrage, and then you hold up, the Jack Smith indictment, and you say right here on page 96, this is a violation of, blah blah blah. I mean, you can do that, right? Can and will are different things, and in between is the sea. And I am so hoping that they find the fortitude to do that, and the courage to piss off and isolate a bunch of the MAGA base who believe that only fake Americans like me have to be held to account, and that Donald Trump gets to crime his way through life because he's Trump and he's a real American and all that. I mean, there will be incredible pushback to anyone who stands up and says, I think this is, potentially a really sound case and a very, very serious set of evidence, series of data and evidence that's been presented by the prosecutor. And I'm very disturbed. I mean, I am rooting for them and I'm rooting for your theory, but boy, I'm not chilling the champagne.
No, that's all fair. But, as I asked you for proof, or not again, proof, evidence that your theory about Biden might be right.
Small signs.
So small signs. Kevin McCarthy on Sunday after the indictment, at least the podcast that Jesse's one of those guys, some right-wing podcast, McCarthy was like, look, I don't, it happens all the time that the guy who's the front runner far out isn't the eventual nominee. We have to have a candidate who's going to take the fight to Biden and talk about Biden's record and not make it about, anything else, blah, 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 blah. Trump at the time, by far and away, the front runner, and Kevin McCarthy, a man of yoga swami-like pliability for ass kissing, with Donald Trump didn't go there, which I thought was interesting. Also, the same weekend that Trump gets indicted, Asa Hutchinson moves up his schedule to say that we should that Trump should step aside and not run and deal with the indictment. I agree with you that he's probably not going to go anywhere, and he's really bad at delivering what was the right message. But he's seeing something that said, okay, I'm going to wait. I wasn't planning on announcing anytime soon, but let me go on ABC and tell Jonathan Karl this. And then, as you pointed out, which I was looking to see who was going to show up at Mar-a-Lago for the airing of the grievances speech, and it was the Mount Rushmore of asininity and nobody else. And at the protests in New York, Donald Trump got Marjorie Taylor Greene and George Santos. That is not exactly they're sending their best, right? And just for,
it's kind of a DNC commercial.
Yeah, no, I mean, and did you see the interview that Marjorie Taylor Greene gave with Right Side Nation? Was it one of these weird right-wing things where she said, look, yeah, lots of people, Donald Trump is joining the ranks of some of our greatest people who ever lived, who were arrested, Jesus, Nelson Mandela, and fun trivia, the person who was interviewing her is actually her boyfriend. Which is a great little metaphor for the relationship between the MAGA right and the MAGA press corps. But anyway, it seems to me like the fact that these people didn't want to go down and be on a stage at a moment where everybody's talking about solidarity and supporting Trump, they didn't want to go down there and they're like, yay, you got indicted for stooping a porn star and paying hush money for it. I mean, it seems to me like the GOP wants to escape, and they're at least keeping a big chunk of them are keeping their powder dry for the possibility that they'll be able to.
Oh, that I believed all along. They want him gone. And they loathe this. They hate being trapped. They hate being hostages, but they're not doing anything about it. That's my thesis, is that they refuse to act on it because they're cowards. And, that's the problem, is that on February 13th of 2021, the whole thing could have ended, but Republicans wouldn't impeach him. MAGA would have cried and screamed for 6 months before they found somebody else. It was a long way till the midterms, a long way to the next presidential, almost 4 years. So whatever. I mean, this is what they've done to themselves. So Kevin McCarthy can do that for Brian Fitzpatrick and his other, not moderates, but his frontliners, his Biden district Republicans who say, you need to give us some space and some breathing room. And it's a logical thing to say that the front runner, usually a year out, doesn't end up being the candidate, the nominee. But what Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy wish for has nothing to do with what the primary voters will do after people in that race refuse to take him on. Mitch McConnell cannot talk to Donald Trump and use wry comments at a Ohio Clock press conference at 2:30 on a Tuesday every week. But I don't think that Tim Scott or Ron DeSantis or Nikki Haley or Mike Pence are prepared to take Trump on, to take him down, to stop him from being the nominee, because they're too afraid of his base. And so, what they all know, Jonah, is that in the back of their head, they know he's going to burn it down. So no one's going to win the nomination anyway. Because if you beat Donald Trump and you become the nominee, he goes to burn it all down. He doesn't have the patience to be a third party candidate. He's too lazy he doesn't have the organization. He doesn't want to spend the money. He's too cheap. So he won't run a third party ticket. He'll just boycott the election and say that the person who has been nominated rigged it, and they're a rhino, socialist, loser Democrat anyway. And he will take just a perfect amount of percentage that kills, that in these close elections we have that we've been talking about, 77,000 votes in 2016, 44,000 votes in 2020. If you peel away from Ron DeSantis or Nikki Haley, you're 3 or 6% of the vote and they stay home, that's game over. So these people are literally thinking right now, I just want the base to remember that I wasn't too mean to him, so that if I win the nomination, maybe they won't boycott me. That is the strategy that I see right now. And so we can all join Kevin and Mitch and be like, yeah, man, it would be so great if he just became catatonic somewhere and played golf and forgot he was ever president. But that's wish casting. No one is willing to take him down. And so that's why I so firmly believe that it's the primary votes electorate that's in charge. And unless you try to change the primary electorate with your persuasion, with energizing new voters to come out and be primary voters, with a real campaign to knock this guy out, he's going to be the nominee.
Or just get rid of primaries entirely, which is, my preferred approach. But
right.
So. All right, AB. Thank you for holding my bag while I was in the dressing room, trying on my, adjustable fit pants. That's very depressing, but you're probably right. So I'll go back to cutting myself.
I come here to depress, and I'm never going to get asked back on the Remnant, but I do want to say I'm going to break the rules, Jonah, and say that I spoke at a deep state globalist conference this weekend, and a couple introduced themselves to me and told me that they've read every word you've ever written, they've listened to every single pod, and they listen to them together and then discuss it over dinner. And that if you were, quote, a god, if they were religious, that they would worship you. And we had such a Jonah fest, and you just have the best audience, and it was just awesome.
Did at some point in this conversation some people in white coats come and escort this lovely couple away?
No, they were totally normal and highly educated and gainfully employed and completely sane. We just waxed over you, and we had such a JG fest, and it was just, no, they're totally normal deep state globalists, and it was awesome.
I appreciate it greatly. Tell them I said
wonderful audience.
Well, no, I agree entirely that the Remnant audience is a wonderful audience. So that is true. They are better than me.
I won't go that far, but they're awesome. So it's an honor as always to join you, and I'll hold your purse anytime.
Do we have to call it a purse? Can't we call it like a carry-all or something? Remember that Seinfeld?
Bag.
Yeah, something like that. Hold my.
I'll hold your beer.
There you go. Hold my beer, or hold my lumberjack axe, or something manly, something with more testosterone to it. So,
but I want everyone to know that when Biden announces his reelection campaign, I'm just somewhere, with my hair falling out. I'm staying there.
When he announces either way, I want dibs on the first podcast interview with you, either to console or to praise you as the one person who called it publicly.
Okay, I'm there. Thank you for having me back since I broke the rule and complimented you.
Yeah. Well, you'll be punished. Okay, so AB has left. As you can tell, love talking to AB. She's one of my favorite people. I apologize for the cursing. She's a bawdy gal. And what are you gonna do? But no, I love AB dearly, and I have nothing that I think I'm supposed to tell you other than looking forward to the May 1st event, which we'll put info about that in the subscriber-only version of the G-File today, assuming I can write it on the way home. I got a crazy busy day. I have to talk to a university class. I don't know if I should disclose the university, but it's one of the best about conservatism stuff. And Passover's coming, as we all know. And also, we've gotten some complaints about the embedded player at the Dispatch since we switched platforms. We're aware of it. We're on it. Adam is mainlining nicotine night and day, trying to fix the problems or get a better one. It will be dealt with. If you need to switch to Apple Podcasts, one of the other sort of platforms for a little while we work this out, we understand, we are not traffic driven anyway, so it's not the end of the world. You can still, if you're a member, you can still comment when you come back over to the Dispatch, but we apologize. It's just one of these things. And with that, I'll see you next time.
No, you won't. This is a podcast.